Hi there, Michael Bovee with Consumer Recovery Network. Thanks for tuning in to DebtBytes, our YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about the differences between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 for the typical consumer looking at the kind of debt relief that they need when it comes to unsecured debts. And if you have some secured debts, we'll talk about how that's impacted, okay? So first and foremost, Chapter 7 is a discharge of your obligations, your unsecured debt. You can reconfirm certain debts in a Chapter 7, like your mortgage, right? So if your equity in your house is exempt and there's no issues with your home and you want to continue to live there, you can continue to pay your mortgage. You can reconfirm that secured loan, right? Same thing with a car, actually. Secured debts in general, there's a method for you to reconfirm the two most common type, which are where you're living and how you're getting to and from work, right? When you go through a Chapter 7 and it impacts your unsecured debts, let's say for the most of us it's going to be credit card debt or medical bills that force us into a Chapter 7, that debt is typically discharged and creditors receive nothing. There are instances where they do get something, okay? Like say 10% of what they're owed or less, right? So how do they get that money is usually because you have some things that are not exempt. In other words, every state has a set of exemptions that apply in their jurisdiction. Even though bankruptcy is a federal court process, it's applied differently depending on the state you live in. If, for example, you live in Florida and you have a $5 million home and you own it outright, free and clear, nobody can take that from you, not a penny of it. Of that value can they take from you. If you file Chapter 7, you could shed $100 grand worth of credit card debt in that Chapter 7 and not lose a penny of the equity in your home because that's the way Florida's set up. It is for a home, a personal residence, and it can't be of a certain acreage size, okay? So same thing for Texas as an example, right? So, and then you can live in states where if you have more than $30,000 of equity in your home, it's not protected. And now the trustee is going to look at it, well, how much more than $30,000? What's the cost going to be to market that home and sell it? Okay, so there's quite a bit there. We're going to go ahead and force you out of your home. You cannot keep it. You couldn't reconfirm it, right? And those are some of the reasons why, and cars can be treated the same way. These are some of the reasons why somebody might avoid trying to file a Chapter 7 is where they live. You also have to qualify for a Chapter 7 ever since the BABCA law changes back in 2005. It created a means test. What that is and it's state specific as well, they take your household size, right? So how many exemptions you have, children, whatever, how many people living, and all of the income that contributes to that household, right? So a spouse could file separately of the other, but each of their income is going to impact the calculation for the individual filing and filing jointly, right? It's again, household income. If it's over a certain amount for your state, then you're gonna not qualify. If you're over by say 1,000, 2,000 or something like that, talk with an attorney and see if they have some allowable exemptions that might apply to you and you'll still be able to qualify for the 7. But if you're much over, that median cap, then you're forced into a Chapter 13 if you need the court's protection from creditors. So Chapter 7 gives you an opportunity to start over and go into the next stage of your financial life without all of the unsecured debt, and you can even shed some of the secured debt if you don't want it anymore. Like say you're underwater on a car loan, turn it back into them and you won't have any deficiency balance from them auctioning it off and there being a difference between what you still owed on it and what they got at auction. Let's say it was $2,000. That's a deficiency balance and that's discharged in the bankruptcy. So there's reasons to do that. When you get that fresh start, it is typically on average going to take just a few months, and the national average cost of bankruptcy is about $1,800, and that's start to finish, right? That's all the attorney's fees, the filing fees, the counseling fees, all the things that go into these are mandatory costs, right? So, and sometimes even less, right? So as you get inland, the coastal cities, busy places, lots of people, maybe those attorneys are going to charge a little bit more, whereas you get inland like I am, you'll find attorneys that can do it for $1,500, even less, right? I've even heard of $1,200. So the cost is pretty affordable. A lot of folks even wait till their tax refund, and that's when they can file bankruptcy. That's why we see a peak in bankruptcies around this time of year, actually. So when you do the Chapter 7 and you get the fresh start and your life becomes more affordable and you've shed all that bad debt, your credit is impacted. It stays on your credit report for 10 years. A Chapter 7 does. Chapter 13, only 7 years. In that 10 years, you are not in credit purgatory. You're actually able to go and finance a mortgage. With FHA underwriting standards, you can't qualify for a mortgage for 2 years after your Chapter 7. That's not that long. You are going to have pre-approved credit card offers in the mail after your filing, directly after your discharge, within weeks. And you could probably walk onto a car lot and get a decent interest rate in that first year. By decent, I mean under 10%. If you want to get really great rates, though, on credit cards, car loans, the FHA is already a great rate on a mortgage, but some of your other credit opportunities, they're just not going to be great rates, but really only for a few years, so not that full 10 years. And then student loans, government-backed student loans, underwriting standards for those are going to prevent you from being able to get new student loans for yourself or co-sign for plus loans type of thing for your children for a few years, but still not the 10. So it's a fresh start, but not necessarily credit-wise. There's a little holdback for how soon you can get on with your life with other financing options. Now, the legal protection that you're afforded through Chapter 7 and/or any bankruptcy is undisputed. So one of the reasons that somebody might jump into filing a bankruptcy and maybe even not have an intention to go through with it is to say they want to stop a foreclosure or they want to stop a lawsuit in its tracks. What I'm saying here is that you're afforded legal protection from all creditors. So your ability to stop that lawsuit in its tracks, or if they're already garnishing from you or they reached into your bank account and levied that, sometimes you can even claw back money that a collector has taken from you by filing a Chapter 7. Chapter 13 is a totally different monster. Most people, the vast majority of people that file a Chapter 7, get through it, complete it, it's over, they move on. It's the opposite with a Chapter 13. Well over half, almost 2/3 of people that file Chapter 13 historically since we've had that option, do not complete their Chapter 13s. There's a reason for that. It's inflexible. That is the number one reason. So let me give you some examples of some of the benefits and the drawbacks. So when you file a Chapter 13, it's a reorganization. In essence, it's a forced repayment plan, right? So you can just go ahead and pay your mortgage like normal, go on with your house. You can pay your car like normal and go on with that car loan and that relationship. You can not go on with credit cards and or other unsecured type of debts. What happens is that, or you can cram down a second mortgage, which is awesome if you're underwater on a second. We just came through a spat of the recession where a lot of folks were underwater almost overnight on their home's value, and they had a large second, let's say $100,000, $200,000 first and $100,000 second. You could cram down that first to the value of the home, even if it was down to zero. Really cool. You just had to go through 5 years of pain in the Chapter 13 to do it. Let me be more descriptive. So let's say you have $60,000 worth of credit card debt, mortgage, and a car payment. And you enroll in a Chapter 13 reorganization plan. The trustee comes up with the repayment structure, and it says that, okay, you're going to pay this much around these unsecured creditors for your credit card debts. And so we're going to have you pay $1,000 a month for 60 months. Well, guess what? That's $60,000. You're paying back your credit card banks at zero interest for the lifetime of the plan, if that's how it ends up looking like, that distribution from the trustee out to the creditors. But let's say you're only able to pay $500 a month to the trustee, and that at least would go towards those unsecured creditors. And now they're all getting half, right? So over that 5-year, 60-month plan, they're all going to get half of what they're owed at no interest. And I should be clear here, Chapter 13 allows for a 3-year repayment or a 5-year repayment. And 5 years is by far and away the most common. So if you can afford only to pay back those unsecured creditors in your Chapter 13, say 10% of what they're owed, that's what they get. So imagine this. You are being sued by a credit card bank, let's say American Express, they sue a lot. And it's a $20,000 balance, right? It's huge. You can't afford it. You stop paying it because you can't afford it, and the situation that caused that hasn't relented. Maybe it's even getting worse. But you're sued, and now you got to take things real seriously. But in your state, you either make too much money to qualify for a Chapter 7, your household income is too high, or you have $60,000 in equity that's not protected, which is far more than what you owe Amex. So it doesn't make sense to try and, do that. What you can look at is a situation where you file, and in the Chapter 13, Amex doesn't get but 10%, even though you're over the median income and can't do a Chapter 7, even though you're over in equity. You file the Chapter 13, and those things don't matter, they don't apply, and American Express is going to get whatever they're limited to, or whatever the trustee suggests that they're going to get. Now, compare that to what you might be able to do if you were to negotiate a settlement with American Express or the attorneys for Amex, in that oftentimes you can settle at 50% if you can show a hardship. If you're in that position, you're likely able to, and or a little higher, not much more. But you have to pay it real quick. So sometimes it's worth it to try and struggle to come up with a scenario where you can avoid Chapter 13. The reason you might want to do that is the following. Okay, so there's legal protections, right? Nobody can garnish you, nobody can reach into your bank accounts and levy or anything if they have a judgment against you. Everybody has to sit down, shut up. Amex coming into the court that just sued you, the trustee says, imagine this, even though it's not like this. The judge says, hey, okay, all you guys go over there in the corner and sit down and shut up. All you banks, all you people that Michael owes money to. And then I'm going to have a nice adult conversation over here, and I'll get to you in a second. And that's what happens. All the creditors in this scenario are going over there, they're going to be quiet, and then the judges and the trustee really is looking at the plan, and the trustee approves it, then calls the Amex and all of your other unsecured creditors back over and says, this is what you're going to get. Okay, see you, bye, right? And everybody leaves. That's kind of an outline of what's typically going to happen, but that's just the beginning. For you, when you're forced to come up with a certain amount of money every month and get that to the trustee, you have to do that in order to keep the court's protection from these creditors that are, barking mad and want their money and trying to sue you. So if you do not come up with the money, say life happens, of course, right? So life happens for you to be watching this video in the first place. So how is that going to stop? It's not. Life's still going to happen. And if a financial setback occurs to where you're unable to pay the trustee that month, you lose some of the benefit of the court. You lose the benefit of being in a Chapter 13, the court's protection, and you wasted some money that you still now owe everybody back to the balance that you originally enrolled in the Chapter 13 with, and perhaps even an inflated amount, and you're stuck. You don't have an answer. You still can't qualify for Chapter 7 in this analogy that I'm providing, or you're in a spot probably where you're not able to raise the money to a lump sum to settle with some of these creditors that are barking mad. So you're stuck. And the problem is that's what I mentioned. That's the inflexibility of Chapter 13. Trustees aren't very forgiving. You absolutely have to get approval from the trustee to live your financial life while you're involved in the repayment plan. So what I mean is that you can't go out and take on typically new financial obligations or contracts, loan contracts and things like that. You have to get them approved first. And they're not known to be all that forgiving and in an approving mood for you when you're not paying all your debts back and you need their protection. So Chapter 13, not a great option for most people, but it's a palatable one, I suppose, if you're in the right set of circumstances where you can't do the 7, you can't come up with the money to settle, and you need creditor protection, or you need to cram down a second, like I said. That's a really cool feature, but it's about one of the only ones. If at some point you want to talk to somebody about you can't qualify for the 7, what can you do to try and navigate your debts while avoiding the Chapter 13? I talk to people about that every day, have for a couple of decades. Thousands and thousands of people have helped come to terms with the fact that they need to file a Chapter 7, how they can make some changes and qualify for a 7, how to avoid 13, or how to come to grips with the fact that, sorry, given your goals and your situation, that's what you need. you're more than welcome to post in the comments below, and let's talk about that. Chapter 7 is real straightforward. What you really need is to talk with an attorney. You can call the hotline and press option 3, and that will get you in touch with some bankruptcy professionals and start talking about that. That's a free consult. I'm at option 2, so if you're thinking, gosh, okay, fine, I did the bankruptcy consult, I can't do the 7, which I prefer you do usually. I need some strategies to avoid a 13. Put them in the comments. I can correspond with you there. Call me on the phone. I can talk with you there. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you on the next video.